Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Let me present to you our Stop Fake project. It was launched on the 2nd of March in 2014. I remember that Sunday evening well. I was at my workplace in the newsroom and transcribed an interview. A day before, unmarked soldiers entered the Crimean Peninsula. The locals called them little green men, and the Russian media called them polite people. They were really polite and do nothing, just stood around the government buildings with weapons. At the same time, Russian media had gone crazy with fake news about Ukraine. So a group of journalists, including me, started a website to investigate this fake news. We decided to check news about Ukraine in the media using journalistic methods, like photos, videos, and other strong evidence. If it turns out to be fake, we put it on our website. If it's not fake, do nothing. It was very easy to be done and did not require money. We all were volunteers. I hoped that the Crimean crisis would be resolved in 2 or 3 months, and we would finish our project then. But since then, we faced a crash of the Malaysian Airlines jumbo jet, shot down by a Russian missile system, Russian aggression in eastern Ukraine, and many other tragic events. We also had some positive news. Visa-free regime with the EU, Eurovision Song Contest in Ukraine, and some successful steps on the path of reforms. But Russian propaganda twisted all the facts about all these events and presented them in a distorted light to the Western audience and also to the Russians. Just a couple of examples. This was not a real Ukrainian banknote that features Adolf Hitler, proposed by the Ukrainian right-wing political party Svoboda. The original photo shows the Ukrainian writer, Pantelimon Kulish. One of the most famous noticeable fakes is that a 3-year-old boy in Slovyansk, in eastern Ukraine, was reportedly crucified by Ukrainian soldiers. It was produced by the Russian First TV channel for primetime news. This blatant lies was based on the words of the only one witness, this woman, the wife of a pro-Russian militant. But the most interesting is the explanation why the story appeared on TV at all. The anchor, Irada Zinalova, said, journalists should not prove that the event happened.
Hello,
it's for
welcome
all of
everybody.
I'm sorry. It's for all of you. It's for all of you to prove that it didn't happen. In general, this is a typical behavior of the Russian media. So this year we celebrated the 7th anniversary of our work. During this time, Stop Fake has become an information hub that studies fake news and propaganda in all its forms. We have checked more than 15,000 news stories and debunked more than 4,000 fakes. We have collected enough fake news to do some research of the narratives behind them. We have identified 18 such narratives: that Ukraine is a fascist state, a failed state, a state run by a junta who came to power as a result of a coup d'etat. The constant repetition of these narratives proved that these fakes were not mistake or bad journalism, but a deliberate act of disinformation. Now, these narratives are still supported by the Russian media system. However, the word junta has disappeared from the mainstream media. But some new narratives have been added, like the narrative of discrediting the Ukrainian local Orthodox Church, which has become independent on Russian one. I have tried to summarize all these narratives. Some of them are aimed at discrediting the Ukrainian army, showing it as weak or brutal. It depends on situation. Others try to discredit the Ukrainian government, both for the world and for the Ukrainians themselves. undermine our relations with Western partners, and ultimately return Ukraine to Russia's orbit of influence. In short, the purpose of these narratives is to undermine the very statehood of Ukraine. We started looking at the situation in the Ukrainian context, but Russian disinformation efforts are not limited to Ukraine. Ukraine is a testing lab for methods of influence. Russia uses the same techniques in Western countries. They exploit the weaknesses of Western democracies in the same way that they exploited Ukrainian weaknesses in 2014. For example, one of the main Russian narratives is in the West is Armageddon due to migration. The most visible fake news story is well known. A Russian-speaking girl named Lisa was allegedly raped by a gang of refugees in Germany. In reality, the rape never happened. Surprisingly, Norway also has its own polite people. Exactly 2 years ago, in October 2019, journalists found illegal groups of Russian special forces in Norway. They operated both in Svalbard and on the mainland. The journalists found evidence that the polite people have visited Norway not for the first time. Some of this evidence even was posted by the Russian military themselves on Instagram. Russia, in turn, called this information fake and a gross provocation. They are not there. It's a famous phrase by Vladimir Putin, "Их там нет." We've heard this before about Russian troops in Ukraine. The Russian media also disseminated information that Norwegian people's diplomats has visited Crimea. That is, in this way, they recognized Crimea as part of Russia. What do you think is the manipulation here? Yes, of course. There are no people's diplomats. Real Norwegian diplomats condemned this trip as an attempt to legitimize the Russian occupation of Crimea. It was a People's Diplomacy Norway NGO. It deals mainly with trips to Crimea and is very pro-Russian. There are many fakes, and each one has its own audience. But why does fake news spread so fast? When we created Stop Fake, we could not imagine that people all over the world would be talking about fake news, governments would fight against them, and social networks would cooperate with fact-checkers, with us. And this will still not be enough. How this come? Why do people believe in fake news? Fake news spreads faster than true. Unfortunately, this is true. Many studies evidence this. Why does information go viral? During World War II, malicious rumors were widely used as an information weapon. Then psychologists derived a rumor intensity formula. In short, the strength of a rumor is the arithmetical product of the significance of the subject matter and the level of uncertainty about available information. The greater the interest in the topic or its importance, and the less reliable the available information, the faster and longer the rumor will spread. This simple formula still works for fake news. An example is the coronavirus pandemic. On the one hand, information is vital, very important. On the other hand, there is a lack of reliable data. As a result, social networks and messengers are drowning in fake news. Scientists found that fake news in Twitter spread 70% faster than true one, especially in the field of politics. What does it mean? The researchers made two assumptions. First, fake news is newer than true. We love everything new and share it more often. The fake news is very different from the rest of the messages in the newsfeed. Headlines shout, attract, encourage sharing, and people share. Second, fake news is more emotional. It's dramatic, it's clickbait. Researchers point out that we are spreading fake news that reinforce our existing views. The algorithms of social networks amplify this effect and keep us in the filter bubble of a single right opinion. We have less contact with people with different opinions and values. And we are increasingly asserting ourselves in our beliefs. But that's not all. Scientists also found that people believe in fake news more because of lazy thinking than because of their views. If we quickly swipe the newsfeed thoughtlessly, we are more vulnerable to fakes. When we stop and think, we immediately become more resilient. And one more reason, we are social beings. When we share what our friends have shared, we feel like a team. A clear example of such group thinking is COVID dissidents. They gather in groups and even organize street protests. We also trust friends and are less critical of what they share. After all, fakes are just fun and simple. And the truth is often boring, complicated, and unpleasant. That is how human nature contributes to the spread of fake news and trust in it. Troll farms, clickbait websites, or publics that spread fake news also contribute to this fake news culture. So they often become a tool in information special operations. They may not even know it and just make money. Not so good news. But the main point about fake news is that we base our decisions on facts we get from the press and social media. When facts are false, decisions are wrong. A lot of people stop believing anyone at all, and this is even more dangerous. People can easily become prey to populists or even take up arms. Let's digress for a minute. What picture do you like more, left or right? You can write it to the chat. I can't see the chat, but it's an interesting experiment. And so then, please write, why did you choose this particular picture? Who could briefly explain me your choice in the chat? And I will see it after the presentation. It was a little joke just to show and think how easy to divide us to groups. It isn't my idea. It is a social judgment theory experiment by Henry Tedgefall in 1970s. It's famous paintings of Vasily Kandinsky and Paul Klee. So you can Google Kandinsky-Klee experiment. He asked people to choose from series of pairs pictures. Then he said that he put them to the group called Kandinsky or Klee based on their preferences. But in reality, he did this randomly. Then he gave them a task to evaluate each other in order to distribute some benefits, like money or sweets. All the time, people evaluated members of their group higher. That's how easily we take group identity, which affects our actions. So the main aim of disinformation is divide people and polarize the society. Divide and rule. It significantly decreases our capacity to solve problems together. That's why our democracies now are very fragile. One of the most important parts of them to be saved is trust. Propaganda kills trust in the state institutions and even trust between people. When I talk about this, I understand that trust in Norway is much greater than trust in Ukraine. So we have a way more work to do. But we also have something in common. a lot of people who get their news from social media. Social media management has also a lot of work ahead of it to make a less toxic and polarized environment on social media. So do governments. They still have to decide how to regulate this environment. But we can take some steps ourselves. For example, journalists have their own ethics. Some aspects of it can also be used by each of us. First, be accurate. Check out the news twice before clicking share. Share facts, not emotions. Second one, be humane. Do not support violence against other people, even on social media. And third, be open. Tell who you are and do not hide behind anonymity. These three principles can be the principles of good communication among all of us. Why should we worry about this? Only one figure. During the undeclared war in eastern Ukraine, more than 13,000 military and civilians from both sides were killed, including children. The news is fake, but the blood is real. So fighting against fake news and disinformation sometimes really can save lives. Thank you.